On today's episode of Locked On Canucks, what are the realistic expectations for Ilya Mikheyev? What will the Canucks do with Micheal DiPietro? And what the hell are people so mad about that Bo Horvat was not at Thatcher Demko's wedding? We discuss all of that and more on today, Monday's episode of Locked On Canucks, and it starts now.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locked On Canucks. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. Hope you guys are doing wonderful on this nice, beautiful summer evening. Very slow day in the world of sports. The home run derby transpired tonight. I'm going to touch on that in just a minute. But, of course, this is Locked On Canucks. And, of course, our Monday episodes are brought to you by the fine folks at BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I also want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast services. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at Locked On Canucks. Please also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, please follow me on Twitter at _Process Sports, like I mentioned. So last week, of course, was very busy. Free agency, the start of that. We're talking the draft, prospect camp, and now it kind of slows down a bit. These next couple of days in the world of sports are very slow, but as you see, I'm wearing my Seattle Mariners hat because tonight we saw a star being born if you watch the home run derby. Now, I know this is Locked On Canucks, but I want to give a quick shout out to our friends right down the I-5, our sister city, Seattle, where we saw Julio Rodriguez put on an absolute show, mashing 81 home runs in the home run derby. Now, you might be saying, Justin, why are you bringing this up? I don't care. Well, I think there's some time to bring some positivity to other sports teams in the Pacific Northwest. Look, the Canucks have not been that great. The Whitecaps are a joke. I know we're not going to dive into MLS because we are rivals with the Sounders and Timbers, but the Mariners are our adopted team. Those that in Vancouver that don't fall under that luster that the Jays are Canada's team. We support the local team down the I-5. That's like me. I support the team closest by. I feel that we are all one in the Pacific Northwest, and we all should support each other, unless it's with the Kraken or with the White or with the Sounders and all that. So I just wanted to say congrats. My guys on Locked On Mariners are doing an excellent job covering the Mariners. Julio Rodriguez, or J-Rod, is an absolute stud. Next year, the All-Star game is in Seattle, and I'm going to try my damnedest to go watch the home run derby because, man, oh man, that was electric TV today. So that was great. But let's go back over to the talk of the Vancouver Canucks. Where first things first, I want to dive into Micheal DiPietro. So over this weekend, the Canucks gave goaltender Micheal DiPietro permission to talk to other teams, as reported. That they were given the green light to talk to other teams. Of course, DiPietro is 23 and just accepted his qualifying offer from the Vancouver Saturday. He is under contract until the end of next year. And then he becomes an RFA. 34 games last year with the American League Abbotsford Canucks. He was 15-13 with 4 overtime and shootout losses. Had a .901 save percentage. Of course, we always talked about his size. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He also, appeared in 3 NHL games. I know I was in attendance at his first game against, I believe it was San Jose, where he just got shellacked. But he was a battler. He played in the World Juniors. And, it's a crowded crease right now in Vancouver. We know that Thatcher Demko is the number one with a bullet, and we're going to talk about his wedding, give him his congratulations at the end of the show. Colin Delia, Arthur Slivos, and DiPietro. So as long as Spencer Martin, we know Demko and Spencer Martin will be the NHL goalies coming up next year, because Spencer Martin proved that this year that, hey, I am an NHL caliber goalie, which allow them to move off from Yaroslav Halak, who, quite frankly, was not very good. Silvos is expected to take a larger role in the AHL, and Delia will serve as the starter in Abbotsford. DiPietro, of course, going back to him, he's a young goalie, but he just, I think it was the size, I don't know, was lack of size or something. Like, he always seemed to be behind the eight ball. I know, there was his, mental health things he had to battle through, which of course, are very serious things that, all of us have to deal with. But I'm rooting for Mikey DiPietro. He seems like a great kid, a great guy that, you want good things to happen to him. But it's just a crowded crease, and that the Canucks, I feel, can just, move off and potentially gain an asset. There are people out there that still need a goalie. He has a strong, pedigree from his junior times, as I mentioned. Um, the size, right? There's not very many goalies that are 6 feet or under. And the Canucks, of course, took Ty Young in the 5th round, so who's again a very young project goalie. So we'll see what transpires with Mikey DiPietro. I don't expect the Canucks to get much in a package back from him, but it will be something to take a look at and see going forward as a piece of news, or something the Canucks might do roster. Maybe he's a part of a package for a bigger deal, maybe a JT Miller deal, which we're still waiting for. But as I said before last week, as the time goes along, I think it's more and more likely JT Miller's here come training camp. So that is that with just the recent news, of the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, the tough news of the Jake Virtanen trial. The Mikey DiPietro, is now allowed to talk to other teams about a trade. But coming up after this break, we're going to start, because it is the off season now, and it kind of slows down. I'm just going to be going through, not every player on the Canucks roster, but certain players on the roster, that are important, that, I'm going to garner the expectations and what I expect from each player going into next season. So today, we're going to start off with the Canucks' biggest free agent signing, Ilya Mikheyev. So after this break, I'm going to break down what are the realistic and what are my expectations for Ilya Mikheyev going into this season upcoming. But first, I want to talk to you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoff and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay. Also, before we get into segment number 2, which with NFL season just around the corner, and of course, big Seahawks fan, might be a slow year for the 12s this year, a rebuild after a certain period of time, but my heart lies with all you 12s out there. So, but also, which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. So excited for NFL season to begin in September, but I'm also super excited for the NHL season to start in October. Canucks training camp in the end of September. And of course, piece that the Canucks acquired this offseason, Ilya Mikheyev, who they 4-year, $4.75 million deal. That was very surprising. I know, of course, included, I did not expect the Canucks to break the bank, but make a big splash like that, signing a guy like a really decent size ticket from giving the cap space. They have I did not foresee it, but the Canucks did it. He is now, solidifies that middle six, that will make it even better. That I said last week is a playoff caliber top 9 or even forward group in total. Last year, Mikheyev, the 27-year-old, had a very, very, good season. He scored a career high in goals. He had 32 points through games, 21 were goals. And he saw his shooting percentage be at a 14.3 clip. And if you look at this player, he's 27 years old, just in his prime, or is in his prime right now. And if you think about over the next couple of years during this deal, you will see hopefully the best of Ilya Mikheyev, just him getting better, more comfortable. This is a player that just came from Russia recently, is getting acclimated to North America. We saw him speak, or if you heard, he spoke English, had made a conservative to speak English, and it was quite well, very impressive, spoke English very well during his media availability late last week. And even again, it's just another piece for guys like Andrei Kuzmenko and Vasily Podkolzin to confide with talk. But now you have, a solid group of Russians on the team that can, work together with one another. They don't feel alone and whatnot. And that is very important, especially for guys like Podkolzin and Kuzmenko, who are young. Podkolzin is in his second year. Kuzmenko is going to be moving to North America for the first time. So having guys like Mikheyev, Podkolzin, and Kuzmenko all together, not only will that help the morale of those three, but it will create a stronger bond for them. And I'm really, glad that was, an option, the route the Canucks went. But when you look at Ilya Mikheyev's game, yes, he scored 21 goals, but what was the biggest thing Patrick Allvin talked about Ilya Mikheyev? He kind of tempered expectations about scoring, kind of saying that Mikheyev wasn't brought in to score goals. We talked about his speed, puck possession, penalty killing, stuff the Canucks were kind of missing. The Canucks aren't a notoriously fast team. Their penalty kill was up and down, to say the least. And Mikheyev will kind of fit in a lot of those roles. And a lot of people that I've been listening to are comparing him to a former Canuck himself, Jannik Hansen. Now, of course, we know Jannik Hansen was, a great forechecker, a penalty killer, scored timely goals, and, use his speed as his greatest attribute. The way I see it is this. That's fine and dandy, but if you're paying Ilya Mikheyev $4.75 million, which is around the same ticket as you're paying Connor Garland, I expect similar, output. I expect a minimum of 20 goals. I expect, if you think about it, if you do the projections, right, he scored 21 goals in 53 games last year. If you project that out, that's almost a damn near 30 goal scorer. Now, I'm not saying he's a 30 goal scorer, but if he can, chip into 20 to 23 goals a year, because he will get opportunity not only on 5-on-5 in the top six, but also on possibly a second unit power play. And, his speed himself, everything I've been hearing about, his speed is key. Well, if he's that fast, somebody was even saying he has McDavid-like speed, right? Like he has the ability to, skate like Connor McDavid. I'm not saying he's that fast and that skilled, but if he has those type of wheels, he's bound to get chances, right? And speaking to people here in Toronto, they're saying, yeah, he gets a lot of chances, but he misses a lot. So even though he shot 14%, even if that drops down to 10%, you extrapolate that over, the entire season, he still should be able to get 20 goals. I believe if you're paying somebody over $4.5 million as a forward and they're getting top 6 minutes, 20 goals is the bare minimum. Yes, penalty killing is important. Yes, speed and puck possession is all important, and the little things are, but you have to look at the bigger picture as well. You're getting paid to also put the puck in the back of the net, and I think Ilya Mikheyev can score 20 goals once again. I think I've seen his game. I've seen his speed, and hopefully he works on his shot and his offensive scoring ability. If he can score 20 goals, I'm not saying, 3 out of the 4 years, that would be, a bigger win than a lot of Canucks free agent signings of late. So I think if Ilya Mikheyev can, be a leader in the penalty kill and chip in with, offensive output, and be just a solid player, I believe the Canucks have themselves a piece right there that is very important. And I expect, if I'm going to put a projection, I think this year Ilya Mikheyev gets 23 goals. We're going to say maybe another 25 assists. I'm saying Ilya Mikheyev gets somewhere around 23 goals and 50 points this year. I think that right there would be an absolute W. And I think that will justify and warrant his contract. Tomorrow on Locked On Canucks, we're going to dive into Brock Besser, and I'm going to explain how I think Brock Besser's game and how the tragedy of him losing his father and all the weight that was on his shoulder is now not there, and how that could help open his game up. So tomorrow we'll go on that. But after this last break, I was on Twitter and I saw Thatcher Demko's wedding and all that, but I just kept on seeing all this negativity about Bo Horvat. So I'm going to go on a little rant about that. But first, we have one more break, and then after that, we will dive into that. So stick around. And welcome back to Locked On Canucks, the show that keeps you locked in on all Vancouver Canucks. I'm, of course, your host, Justin Pooney. So another piece of big news over this weekend was starting goalie, I think all-star goalie, Thatcher Demko, got married in San Diego. Funniest thing was, and I didn't know this, doing research before the show, him and his fiance are now wife were both goalies. She played in North Dakota, and she had a very impressive 1.68 goals against average and a 928 save percentage. That right there is elite. Anyway, so they got married, and we saw, a lot of Canucks and former Canucks, at the celebration. We saw Brock Besser. We know I made a very concerted effort to look on social media, and I see Brock Besser's always commenting on his teammates' photos. People always comment on his. Brock Besser just seems like a good dude in the locker room that people love to have him around. That right there is very impressive. And that makes me even more so want to root for Brock Besser because he seems beloved by all of his teammates. So he was there. We also saw photos of Tucker Pullman, who is supposed to be ready for next season. Dealt with a lot of injuries. We saw, former Canuck people that wanted the Canucks to bring back Troy Stetcher, but now he's an Arizona Coyote. We also, saw Jordy Ben. We saw Zach McEwen, Ashton Saunders, all former Canucks, or the people that are in the Canucks system. And of course, now Zach McEwen is in Philadelphia. But one person that I kept on seeing that people were upset that wasn't there was Bo Horvat. And I know I was on Twitter and it was kind of a slow weekend for me. There wasn't much to do, but I was on Twitter and I saw this stuff and people were like, oh, where's Bo Horvat? Where's Bo Horvat? Well, first of all, Bo Horvat just has a brand new newborn. He's building his own young family. He doesn't need to for Demko's wedding? I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that you work with that you weren't invited to their wedding. You're not going to their wedding. I know there's coworkers that I probably have that won't invite me to their wedding, and I'm pretty close with them because it doesn't matter. You work with people that you're not necessarily friends with. You are on a team with people. There are 23 people on a roster. There are coaches, management. You are not going to be friends with everybody on the roster. What is the big deal that he is not at the wedding? Oh, he's the captain. He should be. Well, it doesn't matter. He is the leader of this team. He is the leader of this organization. He does all the right things. He plays the game the right way. He's a captain the right way. He leads the organization the right way. He's a leader in the community. Why the hell are people so hung up that he didn't go to Thatcher Demko's wedding? What's the big deal? Canucks Twitter is always trying to pick at something and find something to wedge players against each other and all this stuff. And that's why I said before, I think the very first episode I said this market is the toughest market in the NHL to play in because the fan base is on the players and everything. And trying to find the smallest things to nitpick at and complain about and stuff like that. But look, Bo Horvat is a great leader for the Vancouver Canucks. He does not have to be at Thatcher Demko's wedding. Bo Horvat just has to be ready when the puck drops next season. He has to be ready to help out Thatcher Demko on the ice and be a leader of this team. He doesn't have to be at his wedding, right? That's like the same thing with the Halloween party thing that went on earlier this year where they were saying there's a rift between Bo Horvat and JT Miller because they didn't want to be in the same locker room. There's a power struggle. Horvat is being isolated. Like, people are really all over that extra nonsense that doesn't mean anything. You are on a team, and if anybody's played sports on a team setting, you all know, like we all know that have played sports, you don't get along with everybody. If you have all the same common goal, yes, then you can work forward to that. But you're not going to be best friends with everybody on a team. It's damn near impossible to be liked by 20 people that you see on a daily basis because you are all different. So I think people need to lay off that stuff about Bo Horvat. He's perfectly fine. He doesn't need to be at Thatcher Demko's wedding. As long as he's ready come October, that's all that matters to me. So I know it was a slow sports weekend in Canucks land. I know people are still waiting for the JT Miller trade. I know Jim Rutherford, set everybody's to talk about impatience, and now people are trying to switch topics to something else. But this is a non-story. This is not a big deal. So relax, put it to bed, bury it, forget about it, because it's nothing to worry about. That was my rant for today. Everybody just calm down. It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, tomorrow, as I mentioned, Locked On Canucks. I want to thank you for making Locked On Canucks your first listen every day, especially today. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to dive into Brock Besser and what his expectations are for next year. Now, I want you to make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On and experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date in the world of hockey. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Stay safe. Enjoy the baseball All-Star game tomorrow if you are going to watch, or take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.